You ever open your bank app on a random Tuesday, scroll down the transactions, and suddenly freeze because there are like 12 little charges you don't even remember signing up for? $9.99 for that streaming service you haven't watched in months. $12.99 for the meal kit box you canceled in your head, but apparently not on paper. Another $4.99 for some cloud storage you used once. And, wait, is that a gym membership you haven't stepped foot in since January? Your stomach does that little flip, right? You're not broke. You're not irresponsible. You're just quietly bleeding money in 100 tiny cuts you never feel until the total adds up. And somehow, it always feels like it's your fault, like you should have been more on top of it. My name is Theodore, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, about human psychology, and why some people seem to build real wealth almost effortlessly, while the rest of us stay stuck in these invisible financial loops that feel impossible to escape. It's funny, people talk about big purchases and bad investments, but nobody really talks about the slow, sneaky drain that happens every single month in our bank accounts. And here's what I want to unpack with you today: the subscription trap nobody talks about. Not the flashy, cancel these 3 apps lists you see everywhere. Deeper, quieter trap that's costing the average person hundreds or even thousands of dollars a year without them ever noticing. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you might look at your own monthly charges in a completely different light. You might even feel this strange mix of relief and, yeah, a little fire to finally do something about it. Let's start with how the trap actually sets itself. It never begins with one big dramatic decision. It begins with a free trial, or a just $4.99 a month pop-up that feels harmless. You sign up for the meditation app because you're stressed. You add the music streaming because the free version has too many ads. You grab the fitness app because January you was feeling ambitious. Each one feels so small, so reasonable on its own. But then life happens. You forget. The trial ends. The auto-renew kicks in. And suddenly, you're paying for 12 different things that have quietly become part of your monthly baseline. I remember chatting with a woman named Rachel last year. She's 34, lives in Seattle, solid marketing job. She thought she was pretty disciplined with money. One Saturday morning we sat down and actually listed every subscription she had: streaming, news apps, productivity tools, even a wine club she joined during the pandemic and never canceled. Total, $187 a month. That's over $2,200 a year. She stared at the number and said, "Theodore, I literally don't use half of these." She wasn't overspending on lattes or vacations. She was bleeding out in tiny, invisible drips. That's the first layer of the trap, the normalization of the drip. Companies know this. They make the sign-up frictionless and the cancellation intentionally annoying. In the U.S. right now, the average household spends about $219 a month on subscriptions, according to the latest Consumer Reports data. In Canada, it's closer to 240 Canadian dollars, and in the UK, it's around 170 pounds. That's real money. That's rent money in some cities. That's the difference between an emergency fund that actually exists and one that's always almost there. Why does this matter to you? Because those small monthly charges feel harmless until you realize they're compound interest working against you. Every $10 you're paying for something you forgot about is $10 that could be growing in a high-yield savings account or your retirement fund. It's not sexy. It's not dramatic. but it's quietly keeping millions of people from moving forward. Now, let me take a quick aside here, because this next piece is where the psychology gets really sneaky. Companies have turned subscriptions into a form of emotional insurance. You keep the gym membership because canceling it feels like admitting you failed at your health goals. You keep the language app because you might use it when you finally take that trip to Spain. You keep the premium email tool because what if I need it someday? It's not about the service anymore. It's about the version of yourself you're still hoping to become. I fell for this one hard a few years ago. I had a note-taking app I paid for monthly, even though I used the free version of something else 90% of the time. Every time the charge hit, I'd think, I should really switch, but maybe next month when I'm more organized. That little lie I told myself cost me almost $300 before I finally admitted I was paying for hope, not utility. The trap works because it hijacks our future-oriented optimism. We're not bad with money. We're just human beings who hate closing doors on possible future versions of ourselves. And the companies know exactly how to keep those doors cracked open with one-click renewals. Here's a simple breakdown that helped me and a lot of people I've talked to. There are 3 kinds of subscriptions: the ones you actively use and love, the ones you forgot about completely, and the ones you're emotionally attached to even though you barely touch them. Most people have at least one in each category. The danger is when the second and third categories start to outnumber the first. In the US, the average person has between 8 and 12 active subscriptions. In Canada, it's similar, though streaming services tend to be a little cheaper north of the border. In the UK, people often stack more because of all the different news and entertainment bundles. But the math is the same everywhere. Those forgotten ones add up fast. Let me tell you about Marcus. You might remember him from some of my other videos. He's 32, lives in Chicago, good job in marketing. He was convinced he didn't have a subscription problem. Then we did the audit together. He was still paying for 3 different meal kit services. He only used one. A cloud backup he never checked, and a premium sports package he watched maybe twice a year. Total wasted, $93 a month. He canceled everything unnecessary and put that money straight into his high-yield savings. 6 months later, he had an extra $558 sitting there earning interest instead of funding companies he barely remembered. That's the power of the audit. Not dramatic, not sexy, but suddenly you have breathing room you didn't even know was possible. Now let's talk about the part that really stings, the opportunity cost nobody wants to admit. Every dollar tied up in subscriptions you're not using is a dollar that's not working for you. In the current rate environment in the US and Canada, high-yield savings accounts are paying 4.5 to 5%. In the UK, it's a bit lower, but still meaningful. That $200 a month you're leaking on subscriptions? Over 10 years, if you redirected it and let it compound, that's over $30,000. Not life-changing money on its own, but that's a down payment. That's a real emergency fund. That's the difference between stress and options. I had a viewer in Manchester write me after one of my earlier videos. She was 29, teacher, UK-based. She realized she was spending £142 a month on subscriptions she barely used. Canceled 6 of them and redirected the money into her stocks and shares ISA. 18 months later, she had an extra £3,000 invested that she never would have had otherwise. Same salary, same life. Just different choices with the money that was already leaving her account. Here's where it gets personal for me. When I finally did my own full subscription audit a couple of years back, I was shocked at how much I was paying for things I thought came with other services or that I'd outgrown. It wasn't about being irresponsible. It was about how easy it is to let autopilot take over when life gets busy. That realization was humbling, but it was also freeing. Once you see the trap, you can actually step out of it. So what does actually getting out look like? First, you do the audit. Grab a notebook or open a spreadsheet. Go through your bank and credit card statements for the last 3 months. Write down every recurring charge. Next to each one, write how often you actually use it. Be brutally honest. No judgment, just facts. Most people discover at least 3 to 5 subscriptions they completely forgot about. Then, you set a simple rule I've used with a lot of people: the 80-20 subscription rule. Only keep the ones that give you 80% of your value. Everything else gets the axe. For the emotional ones, the gym membership you feel guilty canceling, the app you might use someday, give yourself a 30-day pause. Cancel it. If you genuinely miss it after 30 days, you can always resubscribe. 9 times out of 10, you won't. In the US, you can also set up calendar reminders for every annual renewal so nothing sneaks up on you. In Canada and the UK, some banks now have built-in subscription trackers that make this easier. Use the tools available to you. One more practical tip that's helped a ton of viewers: switch as many as possible to annual billing when it makes sense. Companies often give you a discount for paying yearly, and it forces you to make a conscious decision once instead of 12 tiny unconscious ones. But here's the deeper shift, the one that actually breaks the trap for good. You have to change your relationship with maybe later. That little voice that says, "I might use it someday," is the same voice that keeps you stuck. The subscription trap is really a hope trap. Once you start treating your money like it belongs to the future version of you instead of the hopeful version of you, everything gets lighter. You stop paying for potential and start investing in progress. I've watched people go from feeling constantly behind to feeling quietly in control after they finally faced this. Not because they suddenly earned more, but because they stopped leaking what they already had. So here we are, you and me, at the end of this long, honest conversation. We've talked about how the trap starts small and feels harmless, the psychology that keeps us emotionally hooked, the real numbers across the US, Canada, and the UK, the opportunity cost that quietly steals your future, the simple audit that changes everything, and the mindset shift that actually lasts. But the real takeaway isn't any single cancellation. It's that your money is yours. Every single dollar leaving your account should have a purpose you consciously chose, not one that snuck in while you were busy living your life. If you're sitting there right now realizing you might be in the middle of this trap, I want you to hear this. You're not bad with money. You're not lazy. Human in a system designed to make forgetting expensive. That realization alone is powerful. Start where you are. Open your bank app today. Do the audit this week. Cancel one thing that no longer serves you. Feel the tiny win. Then do another. Because each cancellation isn't just saving money. It's reclaiming a little piece of your attention, your peace of mind, and your future options. And if you've already cleaned up your subscriptions, take a second to acknowledge how good that feels. Then ask yourself, what else in my financial life might be quietly leaking that I haven't noticed yet? Because the game doesn't stop. It just gets clearer the more honest you get. Look, I'm not here to shame anyone or sell you some perfect minimalist lifestyle. I'm just the guy who spent years watching these patterns play out in real bank accounts, real living rooms across the US, Canada, and the UK. And I genuinely believe that facing the subscription trap nobody talks about is one of the kindest, most practical things you can do for your future self. It removes the quiet guilt and replaces it with quiet power. So whatever your monthly total is today, whatever country you're watching from, whatever stage of the grind you're in, know that the shift is closer than it feels. One honest audit at a time, one cancellation at a time, one reclaimed dollar at a time. And one day, you'll look at your bank statement, see all those clean lines with no surprise charges, and smile because you finally get it. The money game was never about earning more. It was always about stopping the leaks you didn't even know were there. Thanks for hanging out with me through all of this. If any part of it hit home, drop a comment with your biggest forgotten subscription or the one you're canceling this week. I read every single one. And if you're ready to take that next step, open your bank app right now. You've got this. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.